Okay, welcome. Today we are reviewing the Spartan Race Charlotte 2022 Sprint map. I have my friend Nick Mask here, and we're going to go over some different details and some approaches that you can take during this race, just to give you a little bit of a competitive edge here. So hit us with a like, hit us with a subscribe if you want to see more of this content, making sure that you can get more of these map reviews and some of our race reviews coming directly to your feed. And also take a look at our Patreon if you would like to support the members here at Torque so we can continue to make this type of content and so we can get high-end athletes out onto the course. All right, here's Nick.
What's up, Rich?
What's going on? How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Just enjoying the morning.
So this map, you and I were just talking, it's pretty straightforward. It's a sprint this year, I think, on both days. So we'll just kind of go through it and touch on some different pieces for what we see. So what was your initial impression of this course?
The first thing I thought, I like the supers and the beasts. So my first impression was, that's the course. That's it. It's super short. I mean, it should be. They're all standardized now. So it's a sprint. The first thing that caught my eye was that there's 3 obstacles in the first mile, and they're all like walls, I think. Yeah, so you have an over wall, a hay wall, and an inverted wall. But walls, I mean, typically aren't rhythm breakers to the point where you're worried about them. So the first thing I saw was this should be a fast first mile.
This should be very fast first mile. And sometimes in a sprint race, depending on where it is, if it's like at a Palmerton or a Killington, you're going to want to manage the terrain a little bit and just know the first mile could still blow you up if the race is still 30 minutes or 40 minutes, because that's still a longer time. I'm guessing this is going to be mid-20s. So along the lines of this first mile, are you just getting after it like it's a 5K, putting yourself right in position right away?
Yeah, and I think it does depend on what kind of athlete you are. If you're running-esque or you kind of rely more on the obstacles to get you to pass people. But I think everybody's got to get out a little hard or a little fast, at least on this one. I would be gunning for the sandbag. Like, it would be as quick as I could get to it. That's obstacle 4, I want to say. And it's right after mile 1. So that'd be a really good benchmark. Yeah, right in there. To kind of know you're a third through the race. It's the first carry. It's the first, heavier thing you have to do. So I would use all the speed I had to get there in really good position.
Because that could potentially, I think that's a good call. Like getting almost in over your head, like almost like what faster effort would feel for like 5K, just because even though it's not really a break on a carry, it's going to give your legs a little bit of a reprieve from that hard pace. Yeah. And you could probably come out of that feeling pretty good because it's going to slow you down so much. The carries haven't been very long this year.
They don't look long. The bucket and the sandbag for this course, and I could be wrong, like the maps aren't always true 100%. So you got to take some of it with a grain of salt. But from what they're showing, both the carries don't look like they're going to be too long. Like if that loop is
really small.
Yeah. And what I did is I opened up a Google map next to this, and then I got the maps identical in scale because Google Maps gives you like a little measurement, and it says this is 500 feet. This is, and you can measure it out. And both the carries look tiny, because if you look at like what a quarter mile is on this course, and then you compare it to those little loops, you're not going to have a quarter mile, half mile carry.
That's a good point, because it does look big. Like the sandbag in particular looks kind of like it could be long. Like I'm guessing it's this whole thing, right?
Sure.
But a quarter mile in comparison to this course, like you're saying, is probably
like 2 inches on that map.
Yeah, for sure. So this is probably pretty short here.
Yeah.
So
worst case scenario, you got a 200-meter sandbag.
It's almost going to be like a stadium race from that perspective. Like a stadium race really bunches up until it gets to like the carries. And sometimes like that's going to establish the entire race. Like once you get to the carries, it'll be hard to kind of pass after. I mean, there's going to be more space here than in a stadium, of course, but getting to this point is going to be very important to kind of set the tone for the race.
Absolutely. I won't give them all away now, but I wrote 3 things after I kind of summarized this map, 3 things that I would take away and be the only things I'd focus on. One of them is crank both the carries. I think they're 2 of the most important defining pieces of this map. They're places where you can make huge moves. So the bucket and the sandbag, I would put a lot of my eggs in those baskets, no matter what. If I'm running or I'm really good at carries, that would be one of my goals for this map.
I agree. There's not going to be much space other than that. And it looks like if you're going to count on people missing things, it's not going to be till the very, very end. So you're going to want to be in that race.
If they miss, they're going to miss the spear. That's right. The miss,
That's it.
And it's a penalty loop.
Because there's not even Olympus here, is there?
It doesn't appear that there is. And I was looking for failable obstacles, and while it looks like there's not a lot, there is something I would like to share about this map that I think some people won't be prepared for. I went on to just like the Apple weather map or the Apple weather app. And at this venue, the humidity is super high because it's like North Carolina. Mm-hmm. You're going to be doing this race in the morning. And on Friday, the dew point is 62 degrees. So if it's under 62 degrees, it's going to be really dewy.
It's pretty uncomfortable. Yeah.
And it's going to be that cold with 85% humidity. I'm going to guess that every medal and all the climb in this entire race is going to be wet.
Yes. I think that that's a great point in that. And even just the starting, depending on how it looks in this first mile, like if this is marshy or whatever, like this is going to be, you're probably going to be pretty wet in this first mile. And it actually looks like it narrows down pretty quickly as well. So that is a good point. So I think the things that would be the biggest problem for that would be monkey bars.
It's monkey and it's multi-rig. Those are the two climbs. And what's interesting is they both fall on mile markers, just about. Multi-rig or monkey's like a little after mile 3, I think. But you basically have these like defining obstacles at each mile marker. So the sandbag's right at 1, the monkey bar or the multi-rig is right at 2, and the monkey bar is right at 3. And those are kind of the 3 I would look out for because the climbs are wet.
So I'm going on the multi-rig in particular because it's kind of that plastic. The rings are more plastic and the monkey bars are metal. I'm definitely going bent arms on the multi-rig just to kind of, and bent arms and matching. I'm not worrying about
sweating. I would match monkey and multi, but especially the multi-rig. Yeah. Bending arms, like for people who don't know, like, yeah, you want your arm at a 90 for those because having a grip like this on wet bars is not ideal.
Unless you have like a massive grip, like huge hands.
Everybody's got there's some people who can just do anything no matter what the weather is. But a lot of people are going to be slipping and falling off these, I think.
Yeah. So taking your time, like as much as you can. It's nice that the multi-rig is after mile 2 because you'll probably be a little bit more established. So you might have a second or two to kind of gather yourself to see how wet these obstacles are going to be.
Yeah.
And then kind of going through it as opposed to somewhere like San Luis Obispo or Utah or something where it's dry and you can kind of just jump onto it and go.
Just go for it. Yeah, like leap past the first 2 bars or rings.
Do you have I don't know if you have any experience with leg mitts. Do you have those?
Leg mitts.
They're the mittens they're kind of a neoprene and then there's a slit in them so that you can open them and you can go through the house. They're actually pretty awesome.
I've seen people wear them, and for a while I was like, oh, I should get a pair of these, like for what obstacles. But then when I went to Seattle a few years back and it was dumping rain, I saw a bunch of people with them and they got onto the beater or the monkey bar or whatever, and they fell right off. And I was like, maybe
that day was ridiculous though.
Yeah. So I know that in the extreme, nothing helps you. And so I've just tried to get it in my head that like, I'm going to go without gloves. I think they would help you in something like this where it's not raining the entire time. It's just a little slippery.
It's where it's like a little bit cold. It's just to keep your hands a little bit warmer.
Yes, you don't have like that cold fatigue in your hand where you have a real grip.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's where they help a lot. And you can take them off. You can use, it's not like the obstacles are still gonna be wet. Your hands are still gonna be sweaty, but they're not gonna be frozen.
They might be soaking in this one though, because there is a rolling mud and dunk wall before the monkey bar.
But that's what's not like, it's like wetsuit material.
Oh, really? So you can like submerge them.
You can get them. You can get all in there.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And then you can pull them back, and your hands they stay warm.
You're selling me on this. I'm gonna look into it.
You probably get a pair because like they're not They're available on weird websites. We'll find it and maybe we'll link to it. But
Okay.
they it's just like somebody selling them out of like their basement or something. So
Oh, yeah.
it's not Amazon coming later today.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you might want to look into it now before you need them. But this might be a good race for it. When you looked at the weather, what was it looking like in the morning? Was it looking like high 40s?
It looked cold. I don't remember the exact temperature, but I remember when I looked at it, my initial thought was, glad I'm not racing. Glad I'm not
Yeah,
North Carolina.
because with that dew point, I could imagine that it is going to be pretty uncomfortable. There was
Yeah.
the Jacksonville race in 2020 was like sort of cold in the beginning, and my hands were frozen even in Jacksonville, and I didn't really expect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the low on Saturday is 39.
Yeah.
So, and it's not necessarily going to, it's like a partially cloudy day, high of 57. I'm guessing it's going to be kind of cold. So
I think it's going to be chilly. Like even San Luis Obispo, which was California, and it was really warm in the morning. It was pretty cold, and I was worried. I was like, "Oh, is it going to be cold for the race?" And this is going to be, what's the first race time at this? Is it 7:30?
yeah, typically, yeah.
Yeah, I think people should be prepared for colder weather for this one. Yeah, it's interesting though. Going back to the map real quick, I was looking at spear throw, and it's right after that rolling mud dunk wall. I know a lot of people are kind of set when they get to the spear. They take a big breath and they have their like routine, and then they line up and they throw. I think for this course, if you've ever thought about what if I just chuck it, what if I just get there, and instead of taking the extra 30 seconds to land it, what if I just threw it? I think this is the course to do it.
Because of the distance, or why do you say that?
So it's right before mile 3. So the first thing is, if you miss, when you miss in a sprint, it's kind of tough to get back anyway, but you have a whole mile to make it up. The second thing is it's a penalty loop. So worst case scenario, if you throw it and you save like 25 to 30 seconds on your routine to throw it, the penalty loop, I can't imagine, is going to be much longer than that. So your punishment for throwing it early isn't too bad compared to the reward if you stick it. So this is a race where if I were going into it against my better, routine, I would get to the spear and I would throw it as fast as possible.
And this is a good chance to do that. Like you're bringing up good points. We're going to take the map at its value and say that believe that the spear throw will be a penalty loop.
Yeah, it might not be.
It might not be.
If it were.
Let's just assume that it is. And so
yes.
I actually like that. I think that's a really good idea. Just go and make it happen. And you're going to come out of it wet. So it's not like that extra time is not going to make you more dry. And those are actually kind of slower obstacles, right? Is rolling mud and dunk wall. So you're probably going to have your breath back a little bit. So it's not like you're racing up to it, needing to kind of like catch your breath. So it's a good point. This is a good chance to kind of rush that spear a little bit. And maybe that helps people. Maybe people sit there like,
you don't have to think about it.
Oh man, I'm going to miss. Yeah, I like it.
You can't even think about missing because you're just throwing it. And if you look, everything after that spear, they're not particularly difficult obstacles. Yes, the rope climb is fatiguing, but if you look, it's really just a 1 mile run with some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
So having that 30-second gap on someone who decides to stick around the spear and better their odds, I don't know if that person, if they're similar speed to you, is going to be able to catch you, because you're just going to have this gap that you've placed on by risking it, and you didn't really risk much.
Yeah, and you might get out of it. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I like it. I think that's a great point. This is something that is weird here, that it's dunk wall, or it's rolling mud, dunk wall, spear, then slip wall. That might be flipped.
That might be switched.
Because I don't usually, or there's going to be a big puddle or something in front of the slip wall, because the slip wall is a slip wall because you come out of the mud.
That changes things. Yeah, if it is rolling, dunk, and then slip, and then spears way later with a K to go, maybe not as
maybe hit it, maybe take it time. But even still on that, because I would just or 16, where the 16 spot is here. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's just tucked in between 15. There. Maybe you come out of this and then go right to the spear. I think this is where the spear was last year. Okay. Like it's all along this like backstretch. So there's like some good flat running right here.
Yeah.
I think so. And then you have the monkey bars, which we talked about. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you.
Um, and the Z wall actually here 18. This could be a problematic obstacle for some people. At this
Yes.
point of the race, assuming it's cold, it's wet, there's probably going to be some mud because of it. It looks like you're in and out of these bogs. And I was actually looking at do you think this is water here for the bucket carry?
I don't I don't know. So what I did is I went on to Google Maps and I found this place. And like I said, I scaled it, but I also took that little yellow guy and I just threw
Yeah.
him into the map. You can't put him on the course, which, unfortunate, but you can put him on the roads that surround the whole course and you can get a really good idea of what this
Mhm.
terrain looks like. Because I couldn't see the elevation on the map. I couldn't make it out. So when I threw the little guy there and I looked around, I was like, okay, this is pretty flat. There's not a lot of hills. And from what I could see, everything looked like pretty, 6-inch grass and kind of boggy. There's some
Mhm.
trees. That green patch right there on obstacle 10, I can't tell if that's just really green grass or if it's like a marsh.
I don't know either, because
Yeah.
that'd be interesting if this bucket was through the water, because that looks like what it
Ooh.
would be. Sometimes it will put you right on the edge of something, like
Yep.
you'll remember the log carry at West Virginia, right?
Yep.
Like they
Oh
kind of
yeah.
put
And
you
you're
in.
knee
You kind
deep.
Yeah, and you kind of have, and some is knee deep further in, or like you have to kind of pick your line. It could really matter.
Mhm.
So that could be worth noting there if that's water or
And if
not.
that's the case, even more value to really pushing the carries because people are going to get slowed down in those.
If you can come out of the sandbag and really hammer to
To the
the
bucket.
bucket, I think that'll be a good spot. And that should really be like there shouldn't be much conserving from that point.
I don't think so. I think a lot of your final push or kick kind of goes into that bucket and you survive the last mile and a half because obstacle transition is going to win this race for the people who are trying to win. Because everybody's going to be able to get through this pretty quickly, I think. It's just going to be how good are you at getting in and out of these, slightly rhythm breaking obstacles
Yeah.
and how hard are you pushing the carries?
Yeah, and if like you're not necessarily going to be as proficient as somebody, hammering the carries is where you could
Yes.
potentially make up or put a hurting on somebody else to maybe slow them down.
Yep.
And back to Z Wall, this is going to probably be more failable than typical just because of it being wet and
Yeah.
potentially cold and muddy. So where it is at this race, right? Because it's what's the end? A fire jump, A frame to finish again, and then rope climb,
No.
A-frame, and then fire jump. So because there's not really anywhere to make things up,
Mhm.
are you going slow through Z-Wall, or are you going to try to make that last push if you could potentially catch somebody on it?
Those are the thoughts that keep you up at night when you're thinking the race. Spartan always has this ability to put one or two obstacles in a place where it's just the most heinous spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think putting Z-Wall right before you can see the festival and see the finish line is just diabolical because you're going to have so many people get onto this Z-Wall that's kind of muddy, their hands are wet, and they're going to try to push through it really quickly, and they're going to fail, and they're going to be doing burpees looking at that finish line area. I think that's a game day decision. Yeah, I'm going to audible when I get to the Z-Wall and look at who's around me. If I can't catch anybody and I have a decent gap, I'm taking that thing as slow as I possibly can.
This is definitely the obstacle that is going to be the most worrisome, in my opinion. I would be the most worried about this one. Coming up to it, be like, oh god, all right.
Z-Wall is scary because it's the
Yes.
most I would say, what do you underestimated, overestimated? Like people think it's easier than it is. You can
Yes.
slip off those pieces of wood. Sometimes they're sanded down a little bit or they have some chips in them. Yeah, I would never rush a Z-Wall to get an extra 2 seconds.
I'm the same. I'm going slow. I'm
Yeah.
probably going to go slow, even if it's neck and neck, and I will just sprint my ass off to try to get and jump up that rope as fast as I possibly can.
Oh yeah. 100%.
So I'm going slow. That's what I'm going to try to do. Because
maybe that's poor advice for someone who just thinks they're extremely proficient on the Z-Wall. And if that's you, great, you've mastered it. But for majority of people, they should treat it with respect and they should run a little harder when they get off it.
do you lead with your left or with your right?
That's a good question. I lead with my right, and I like to have I like to go around the 90 first. So that I'm coming into just looking at the bell, because if I have a good foothold, once I come around that 90-degree bend, sometimes my arms are long enough that I can just jump for the bell and I can skip like a good third of the Z wall. That's my look at it. If I have to go leading left hand, like Olympus, I lead left hand. So depending on the obstacle, I like changing the way I lead. So I think I'm kind of ambidextrous for a lot of them, but if I have a good line and a good preference, it's right hand for sure.
I've done back and forth, and I've thought the same way. I was like, I want to lead with my strong hand, but when I went and tested it out once or twice after a race, right, I literally would like hit my splits to see how long it was taking, just comparing, going back and forth, left and right. My left was actually a little bit faster,
Really?
leading with my left, and I think just having, because there's a point, right, like around some of the bends where you're anchored by the trailing hand, and having my anchor hand be my strong hand seems to really have helped with that. So I'm going to go left no matter what. I know what you're saying about the being able to kind of like see the bell and jump at it. And it's nice to get around that blind curve first, just because it's like a relief, because that's really the hardest part.
Yep.
But I'm going to go left, and just like however that like lines up on the wall is just what I'm going to deal with. And with the caveat of like making sure, because on these uneven terrain ones, like they can be tilted.
You should know your line going in.
If like walls. It's tilted, and if I'm going to be leaning with my left, I'll definitely go the opposite side, just so I can be leaning into the wall, so it's not pulling. Because then it's really hard if you get on the opposite.
How you could look at any of the 30 Spartan obstacles they have and do like a 30-minute deep dive on like how to approach and like kind of dissect why this obstacle is like harder than it looks, or why you can be faster at it that you didn't know. Z-Wall is definitely one of those where I learned a lot about it a month ago that I knew nothing about until that point. Just talking to like Mark Audette and Logan Broadbent, they like opened my eyes to some of the aspects of these things.
Mark looks at the feet. He likes the way the feet look. He picks it based off that. And I never would have thought to even.
And he's successful because of it. Like it. Yeah.
And they are laid out different. Some of the feet are closer to the edge.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I didn't either. It's not uniform.
Olympus holes are laid out different, if you didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sometimes they have double down holes, double up holes. Sometimes they alternate. And that can matter for where your anchor hand is.
Yeah. Huh.
Finishing notes I had on this course, there's 2 places where you can really check the competition around you, and those are the carries. Everywhere else, the people you're really concerned about are going to be too close behind you. Like you can see on obstacle 7 where like you're going to pass by again, but like the people you're worried about are not coming down. So it's just the carries. The carries give you an idea, like an open look as to who's around you, but that's your only 2 places. There's not a lot of looping.
That's a good point, because this is like it's a lot of long straightaways. So it's a big loop. It really is just like one big loop.
It is.
So on the A-frame, are you just jumping from the top? Or are you going to jump from the middle? How high up is too high to jump off of that thing?
How much do you need to win? Not the top. If you ever want to race again. I think worst, highest I'd ever jump if I had to would be the middle bar. If I like really needed to get there, I'd hit feet, roll, and go. Since it's at the end and they keep putting it at the end, if it were in the middle of the course, I'm just crab walking down. I'm rolling and crab walking down. Like there's no jumping required. If you want to get a few seconds and be speedy on the A-frame, I think after you've passed that bar, if you have a good, platform off the rope, jump, like you have strong legs, just jump.
It's right there.
The fire, I'm going to say it. The fire line is not an obstacle. It is in between your stride. You are going to run over it.
It is for photos.
It is. Yeah. And it's super sick and it's warm on cold days. I love the fire.
It is nice. I like the way the fire feels. Yeah, for sure.
If it's your last obstacle, really, you should get off it as quick as you can. I'd say once you get past the bar, you should probably feel safe about jumping from wherever.
Just got to send it, bruh.
Yeah.
Just got to send it.
Yeah. I mean, what we should do is we should just time what's faster, triple rolling or double rolling or roll jump. and see how much time you actually gain from it.
I know. I bet it's like
negligible.
a second, maybe a second would be like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a second back in my A-frame.
Yeah, for sure. Every second matters.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's my summary is, blast the beginning, work really hard on the carries, and be really safe on the wet climbs, because you should probably match grip and be careful on the Z-wall. It's probably going to be wet.
Agreed. Prepare to be a little bit colder than what you'd want it to be for a race in the southish. For sure. So it should be fun. It should be muddy. Just get out there and push. And a course is as hard as you want it to be. Right.
That's you can make this thing awful.
Hard.
Yes.
Really, really hard. So it's always something to remind yourself you don't need to rely on the course to be a hard time. You could go as hard as you can. And
that's actually one of my favorite quotes. I'll just bring it up really quick that I got from listening to some podcasts the other week. I think it was Kirk DeWint who said it. And he was like, the difference between long Spartan races and short Spartan races, like fast ones, is that the long ones, the suck, like the discomfort and all that pain is going to find you. Like the course is going to put you into that. And the hard thing with these courses is you have to put yourself into that. Like when it's a short sprint, or if it's more of a running event, like the hardest part is that you are now the one pushing yourself into the pain cave, instead of just eventually, a 2-hour race. Yeah, it's going to hurt. There's no way around it.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a kind of a skill too.
It is. Yeah. Being able to, put yourself in that zone of just like suck, It's just terrible. But that's what this course is. Whoever wants to get themselves in that area as quickly as possible is going to do well.
Cool. So we'll leave it on that. Get out there, have some fun. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, catch all these map reviews. Take a look at our Patreon, get early access to map reviews and athlete interviews, and just to help out the athletes of the sport. So that's us signing off.